I treat songs as found objects because they have a history. You know, they've had a history before, but then when you take them out of context and put them in a different situation where you wouldn't expect it, it's almost like the lyrics take on new meaning in a particular context. I often work in public space and often with these intervals of silence, so you might happen upon it unexpectedly, as in this case. And I like that. I like when people either wait in anticipation or they don't expect to hear something, and then I'm interested in how that works, like psychologically, you know, this all of a sudden hearing a disembodied voice that you can identify with because it's clearly untrained or there's no musical accompaniment. And so I think I'm interested in how sound can heighten your sense of yourself in a particular place and time. You know, for that moment or those moments where you hear it, you're all of a sudden aware of your environment. You're aware of the place you're in, whether it's a beautiful setting like this by the water or in hearing a voice through the public address system of the supermarket. So all of a sudden you're engaged in your environment, and it's quite different to listening to music. Normally it would take you to another place, you know, or you're very engaged with the performance. But when I do work in public space, it's often about the place and activating the acoustics, the architecture, and being aware of heightening your own sense of self in a particular place. When I'm trying to get inspiration for a work, I'm looking for a particular atmosphere, acoustic, history, the architecture. All of these things inform the work, and that's usually how I like to. Why it's important to make site visits and just really to, you know, get a hook, some kind of hook. Well, a good example would be my work for Documenta, because that really was informed by the place. I mean, I didn't know much about its history, other than it was a very quiet train station, and I walked to the platform's end and looked out towards the hills and thought I wanted to work with that space off in the distance, and I could imagine sound being projected from afar. And then I thought, okay, I found my location, and that will be these themes of distance and separation, which I've worked with before, but in this case it was really strong, you know. And so then I did some research into the train station, which was in Kassel, where Documenta happens, and I was quite shocked actually to see that it was the reason it's such an ugly city. It was because it was so badly bombed during the war because of this ammunitions factory. And if I could have followed the train tracks just around the bend, it would have taken me to Henschel and Sons. But I didn't know that when I was standing at the platform's end looking out into this very tranquil situation with the birds singing in the hills, and then discovered that this ammunitions factory was a forced labour camp, and that this train station itself sent people to Theresienstadt, which was one of the camps during the Second World War. And Theresienstadt was the camp where they did send the actors and the creative people, artists, writers, musicians. And Pavel Haas, he was a Czech composer, he composed his Study for Strings while he was there. And it features in this propaganda film that was shot while he was interned in the camp, and the camp was set up to look like it was a nice place to live. You know, there was cafes and shops, and everyone is sitting around tables listening to this concert. But it was all a big hoax. It was only to show the Red Cross. And then after the film was finished, everyone is sent to Auschwitz, and most of them were killed. Well, you hear two recordings of my own voice where I'm singing a song called O Willow Waly, which I first heard in Jack Clayton's film The Innocence, which is an adaptation of Henry James' famous ghost story, The Turn of the Screw. And so each of the recordings are playing simultaneously, so you get this feeling of the sound, it's projected across the water. And in the film, I mean, it's really interesting. The pivotal moment in the story is when the governess, she's the new governess, and she's looking after Flora, the little girl. But Flora is often heard humming this song, or singing it to herself, and the new governess thinks it's strange because the song alludes to quite adult themes, and so she discovers that the former governess has drowned in the water, and the water is where she first sees the spectre of the previous governess, the ghost of the previous governess from the reeds across the water. And it really does look like this was shot. This was the scene in the movie, this location with the willow tree, because the song is all about the willow tree, under the willow tree, where I lay my love and I beneath the weeping willow, you know, is the song, and it's on the water. But it's at that moment that the new governess thinks she sees this sinister spectre hovering in the reeds, and at the same time Flora is singing this song, and it's like they're both singing it, the former governess and her. So it's like she's channeling through the song. She's communicating to Flora through this song. So the song sounds very innocent. I mean, when you hear it, I mean, but it does have this kind of dark side to it. And so I was so amazed at this location, because it is so much like the original, the location in the film, which inspired the work. Beneath the weeping willow, and now alone I lie. Everyone can identify with the human voice, especially when it's stripped down just to the bare voice. You know, it has lots of associations. People often tell me that, you know, when they hear like me singing songs, familiar songs in the first person become very different when it's just the voice. And when there's no musical accompaniment, and even though I'm keeping as true to the original as I can, it sounds like I've slowed it down or something when I haven't, and so it gives it a kind of more of a melancholy feeling. But often the songs that I choose are songs that you might sing by yourself, and they are these melancholy, often the more sad songs. And so I think everyone can identify with the voice. You know, well, my mother used to sing to me when I was, or you know, lullabies, or and you know, and it's important for me not to do anything post-production to the voice to keep it as dry as possible, so that it, you know, if you hear a mediated voice, it's always made to sound nicer. It's reverb, but when I do it, it's dry, and so you can more identify with it. And I think it has this, it's more disarming in a way when it is just a normal voice. It could be anyone's voice. Something does happen which is kind of unsettling in a way, because you do hear this very intimate voice singing almost as if like privately, like you might sing when you're alone. But I've chosen often these very public places to experience the work, like when I sang through the public address system of the supermarket, or when I did the work at the train station in Helsinki, or the bus station in Belfast. You know, so these songs, and again, I'm singing them in earnest, like I'm singing them, but more to myself. You know, and so I want to create this feeling of a very private moment in public space, and I think it does create a tension in the space. Well, I think sound, and particular song, can be a strong trigger for memory, but it can also really heighten your sense of self. And so I'm interested in, when you say simultaneously, I think you can have a simultaneous experience of being taken away with the sound, as you might do if you were listening to a performance, but also you're very grounded in the present moment, because it's often in these very busy public spaces, you know, like under the bridges of Glasgow, where there's lots of ambient traffic noise and people and the sound of the water, and all of these sounds that really make you aware of the place you're in, you know, and you really begin to notice the acoustics, the architecture, and the people you're next to. You know, you're not sort of taken away to another place, but a little bit, you know. So it's a kind of simultaneous experience of when you experience the work. Art should really make you feel something, you know, and make you think, you know. And I don't mean it has to be overtly political, but just engage you in a way that makes you feel something anew. Especially with the medium of sound, you can really engage with your environment and draw attention to it in a new way. And I think, yeah, I mean, art really does have the power to do that. Till my lover returns to